Just a chair. Oh, that's yes. Yeah. That's pretty. Okay. All right.
Good afternoon, family and friends. Thank you for being here today to celebrate the life of Roger Atwood Faulkner. I know Sandy and the entire family very much appreciate your presence and support during this difficult time. It is always painful to lose those that we love and care for, but we need to remember that love shared is never lost. It is always held within us, and the positive regard that we give one another is a place in which love can grow and more and be shared again and again with those we care for. Roger once said, "Terrible things are needed to create beautiful abstractions." He was speaking in terms of the computer code, which I must confess I can't speak to because I'm just not one of those people that can do that, but he understood it very well. And even when he said that, it just sort of reminded me of how life is, life in itself. That sometimes we have to go through some pretty terrible things to create the beautiful life that emerges. And today that life is celebrated in Roger Faulkner. Roger was born July 2nd in 1940. He was raised on a small farm in Asheville, in North Carolina. And he was born a brilliant person. He got his Bachelor of Science in Physics from North Carolina State and a PhD in Physics from Princeton. He was clearly no slouch when it came to brain power. And he was able to use that power in ways that made important contributions to our world. He was part of the development team for the Unix system. And even I know, I've heard of that. Many of you already know exactly what that is. But he was on the team that helped develop that in such a basic way that I think we can literally say that Roger's contributions professionally made huge differences in our world as we know it today. But not only did Roger share professionally, he shared personally. A brilliant and quietly funny man, he was able to bring smiles to the face of those around him in very unexpected kinds of ways, in very humble ways. And I think today, in the world that we are in, when we often have to hear bombastic expressions of one's sense of self or importance, Roger was quite the opposite of that. He went about his work quietly, not so much talking about it, but simply doing it in the brilliant way that he did. Focusing on the kind of details that most of us don't have the attention span for. And yet those critical details were the kinds of details that made life go as smoothly as he could find a way to make it go. Even though Roger was an atheist, he believed he was on a mission from God, interestingly, to create the one true debugger. Sort of like the Blues Brothers were on a mission, as was Roger. And that in and of itself is also a wonderful expression of how to go through life, we need people that debug life for us, that make the road a little bit easier, a little more solid, a little less mysterious, a little more loving, and more fun. So today we are here to share these memories to support Sandy and her family, including her daughters Marianne Faulkner and Bethany Perry, son Jonathan Faulkner, grandchildren Kaylee Jeltema, Annelle Berry and Shane Berry, brother Fred and wife Nancy Faulkner, sister Linda and Sheila Clarkson Faulkner, and of course his little dog, Billy. We are here to share those memories, and our time today is actually being live streamed worldwide for those who would like to also hear memories of which you have of Roger that have added to your life, that have helped bring you some new understanding and new enlightenment. We want to spend a little time today sharing those memories, but with the idea that when we share with one another, we are giving a gift to each other of perhaps knowing Roger yet a little bit more, maybe a little more deeply than we did in the past. And in a way that perhaps is maybe more personal and yet will shine a light on this beautiful soul that he was. Being a very quietly generous man. He was understated in so many kinds of ways. And yet when you see those around him, you know that the beauty that he shared in his life was as real as anything we can touch or feel. So I would like to invite you in this time that we have together, whether you be an adult or a child, male or female, old or young, hearing or non-hearing, to please come forward and share that experience with us. We're a small group here. It's a small family. No nerves need to be overpowering here. This is a time that you can have to cherish for yourself and share those memories of Roger that you would like us to know. For his soul was a beautiful soul, and we are enriched to have known him. So I would like to invite you to come forward one by one. We would move this mic around, but because we have the video on, we're going to just stay still today and hopefully share this experience with others. So please come forward as you're ready. Thank you.
For those of you who do not know me, my name is Bethany. I was part of the package deal that led Roger from California to Michigan. Sorry, not sorry. At the time Roger really entered my life, we were mourning the death of Sandy's first husband, Mike. Roger flew out here to help and be a comfort. You might think that an ex-lover of Sandy showing up at the time of her husband's death might feel a little intrusive to all of us, but it never felt like that with Roger. His soft-spoken, mild manner was a comfort. He knew when to step up and help and when to step back and blend in. It was as if he had always been there. After a while, it became clear that he was still holding a flame for Sandy. He was adorably smitten. Their wedding was absolutely fabulous. Their efficient Pam hilariously referred to them as well-seasoned because they were not exactly spring chickens when they wed. It has been a Hallmark movie. We have lived in paradise. Deer, turkeys, rabbits, herons, and cranes. Roger loved watching for the does and fawns every spring. We have a mated pair of barred owls who live on the property. He whined because it took years for him to finally catch a glimpse of them, and he was giddy when he finally saw them. He bought a beast of a brush cutter, lawnmower, weed whacker, and a John Deere Gator, which we called the green machine. It's a little souped up green golf cart, and some chainsaws. He kept trying to talk Sandy into allowing him to buy a kind of swamp runner that would allow him to pull dead trees out of the wetlands surrounding our houses. That was always vetoed. He would spend hours and days upstairs in his office writing code and then suddenly decide to go out and cut down a tree. He would cut off all the branches, cut those in specific lengths so they fit just right in his little wagon, cut it all over to the clearing where he would stack everything in very neat piles, and then he would light a gigantic white man fire and sit there for hours, smoking cigarettes and spraying the surrounding trees with a hose. I watched from the window more than once and saw him sitting on his green machine with arm extended and a fabulous look of satisfaction on his face, like, I did that. Roger had what Sandy called a career-induced case of bipolar disorder. He would come down from his office and grumble under his breath. I'd ask, well, how are you today? He'd answer, I'm just another cog in the wheel. Just a cog in the wheel. Or he'd come down with a little bounce in his step and a small smile on his face. And I am brilliant. He had probably just put back a wad into the system and everything worked out smoothly, so he was feeling rather satisfied with himself. I have suffered from migraines since I was a little girl. When I would have an intense migraine and I needed to go to the hospital, I could call over to Roger and Sandy's house in the middle of the night and tell them, my head hurts, I'm ready to die. I can't do this any longer, I have to go to the hospital. He would simply say, all right. He would get up, throw on clothes, drive over and get me. He would drive me all the way downtown to ER, wait quiet as a mouse beside my bed in a darkened room, and if the ER staff wasn't moving fast enough for his taste, he would quietly step outside, release his gruff side, and advocate for me. And the many times he has done this, he has never complained, never even jokingly said, hey, hon, can you have your migraines in the daytime from now on? We had movie date nights. I'd come over and we'd sometimes binge watch Dexter, The Tudors, The Borgias, Rome, and World War II documentaries. We'd talk about history, and I'd drool over the fabulous dresses in some of the series. We'd watch one episode, and then he'd look at me and ask, you want to watch another? Yeah. I will sorely miss my movie buddy. I will sorely miss my history buddy. If I hadn't visited in a while, when I did show up, he'd say, where have you been? You need to spend more time in the bosom of your family. It always made me feel like $1,000,000. He didn't have to love me so dearly. He had kids. But when he referred to me as his daughter, my heart would overflow. Between Roger, Sandy, and me, and at one point we had a chorus going, I sure am lucky. No, I'm the lucky one. No, I'm the lucky one. He was very generous with his love. But we knew that he had a PhD in physics from Princeton and that he was a well-known programmer in the computer world. But he was so incredibly humble that we didn't know the full extent of his legacy or the impact he had on his colleagues until we started hearing stories from all of you. It has been amazing. This man was truly brilliant professionally. But we knew him a little differently at home. Out of my favorite stories, this is, I think, it's a fabulous home story. Roger had laid his pants down on the floor and Lynn rolled on the other side and then picked them up and was genuinely confused and surprised that there's a dog here on there again. At one point, he had hung his head in his Roger Faulkner way and said, Sandy, I think your dog and I have something in common. Parts of our brain are pretty smart. Roger had really cute expressions. He would stick one finger up in the air and exclaim, ah, and say things like, ack. He's the only person I've ever known who would speak in comic book exclamations. Every morning he would have a bowl of shredded mini wheats and a banana, and he had to cut the banana into just the perfect amount of slices so he had a slice in every spoonful, and he would proudly announce when it worked out perfectly. I have accomplished this. And when he would eat without knowing it, he would verbally when it tasted particularly good. When he finished a satisfying meal, which was pretty much daily because he's the best cook in the world, he would sit back and give a wonderful sigh, a smile, and sometimes a tickled chuckle. Sometimes he'd give that same sigh when we hugged him. It's the kind of thing that makes you feel good inside just to hear it. Roger and Sandy had a wonderful marriage. They genuinely liked each other and enjoyed each other's company. I feel privileged to have been able to watch and take in this wonderful example of how fabulous a marriage can be. Roger was a romantic. He loved chick flicks. I caught him watching Cinderella as I was walking through the bedroom one day. You flipping through the channels, or are you actually into this? I am intentionally watching this. Do you have a problem with that? No. Watch to your heart's content. His almost 13-year-old grandson would say, that's embarrassing. Sorry, Shane. Roger loved Hallmark Channel romances, and he was not ashamed to say so. And I loved that about him. There's one more thing I wanted to share with you. When Roger and Sandy were planning their wedding, I think my daughter Kaylee was originally going to be a flower girl. We were going over which groomsmen were going to escort which bridesmaids down the aisle, and Sandy was to be escorted by her brother. Kaylee asked Roger who was going to walk him down the aisle, and he said something like, well, I guess I'll just have to walk myself down the aisle. And Kaylee piped right up and said, I'll walk you down the aisle. So now, relatively recently, Kaylee was planning her own wedding. And it was unclear for a while whether her father was going to be able to walk her down the aisle. Well, Roger piped right up, I can walk you down the aisle. He would say it over and over to almost the point of annoyance. And when he had the heart attack and he was in ICU with a ventilator down his throat, he had just woken up and they had told him what had happened. And he looked at Sandy and he held her hand tightly. and he looked over at Kaylee, and he used his 2 fingers to walk up her arm. He still wanted to walk her down the aisle. He made it to her wedding. We have a couple of wonderful pictures of him and Kaylee. If energy merely shifts forms and our consciousness somehow continues after death, I hope he is able to perceive the incredible amount of love, honor, and respect in the hearts of those who are gathered here and abroad today.
Is there anyone else who would like to share?
My name is Patrick, and I've finally become known as Sandy's friend of longest duration. There was a funnier way of putting that at one time, at least I thought it was funnier, but I'll let her tell you that. Okay, she just told me. What I appreciated most about Roger was how unassuming and how kind he was. I knew he was smart, I knew he had a PhD, but I didn't know that because he told me. I know it because Sandy told me. I knew that he did not try to talk shop with me. We're from vastly different professions that don't, well, these professions have trouble communicating with each other. But he would let Sandy and I talk shop for hours. I had the privilege of having him in my home a few times a year, on and near this holiday or that. And that went on for a long time, and I regret that that's going to be over, at least Roger and Sandy. I also happen to have 2 developmentally disabled fathers. They both have Down syndrome. Roger listened to them. He didn't have a clue what they were saying, I don't think. My wife and I hardly have a clue what they were saying. But he listened, and he listened. And every once in a while, he would say something encouraging them to talk more. Every once in a while, he would look over at me or at my spouse, Candace, and say, this sounds important. Do I need to know what they're talking about? My words, not his, but he would make that clear somehow. He was always very kind to my daughters and to me. When he was in the hospital and quite ill, really, it was about 2 days after, I, of course, asked him how he was doing, but he asked me how I was doing. Because I was struggling with some stuff in my own life at that time. His kindness and how unassuming and very human he was will be missed by me and my family. Thank you.
We have a video. Oh, I'm sorry. Please come forward. Yes, thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nina Lazari. And I just would like to share, maybe I should stand up here. Is this better? Can people see me better? Okay. So I moved here to Michigan 6 years ago, and I met Sandy and met all of the wonderful people, the staff and the board member of Deaf and Hard of Hearing Services, And that was really how I got to know Sandy, and it was wonderful. And then I found out that we both had some connection to New York, and I was able to meet her husband, Roger, and oh my goodness, I was so impressed with him. He looked very much like my father. He looked like a logger, and he seemed very comfortable in his typical plaid outfits. And so when Sandy introduced me to him, I assumed that he was a logger, so I did not realize that he worked in computers, because he was so humble, and he had such a good heart, and he was always willing to socialize and spend time with his family and friends. I was so impressed when I met with him. I just feel like Sandy was so lucky, and Roger was so lucky that they were able to be together. And so, and I just hope the best for Sandy and her family, and I hope that you can find peace. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Jeff. Roger was the third great mentor in my life. We worked together for about 20 years at Sun Life Systems, which was, I think, a second home for him in some ways. And we were there from 1990 till I was there by 2009. And Roger was, I don't know how to put it other than he was the spiritual leader of the Solaris Kernel Group. He wasn't just another engineer. He was someone who made everything that we did feel like not just work, but a cause that people were invested in. And I can't, even today, I can't help but smile when I think of Roger, because he brought so much joy to so many people. He was a remarkably complex man. He would read things like everything from Anna Karenina to the biography of Lincoln. In fact, while he was reading the Lincoln biography, you always knew that was what his current book was, because people would have problems at work and he would say, you know, Lincoln really had it tough. He instilled in everyone the notion that quality was really important for us, and he kept a reminder of that in his desk. He had a jar of rubber severed fingers. And the idea was that every time somebody made a mistake, they would have a finger sliced off and put in the jar. It was funny because for the longest time, Roger was single. And I asked him, you know, would you ever consider marrying again? And he always said, I'm not the marrying kind. And I said, you know, there's no one you'd ever consider? I said, well, there was this one girl, Sandy. And he told me about this story from years back, and sure enough, years later they got together again, and it was such a wonderful story to see Roger so happy. I've never seen him so happy as when he connected with you again, Sandy. So thank you for bringing so much joy into Roger's life.
My name's Rich, and I know Sandy for quite a few decades because her husband, Mike, was my brother. And when my brother passed away, I looked at my sister-in-law and thought, who else for this orderly woman? And then I heard about this California interloper who was going to come and replace my brother. And I thought, what kind of a man is this going to be? And then he shows up this tall, with a ponytail down the back. And I'm a bit on the skeptical side until he walked up to me and shook my hand and then gave me a hug. And I knew at that moment, this man was a perfect fit for my sister-in-law. And over the years, he proved it. He was a kind and gentle man. I'm interested in a lot of things, and I tried to get him to tell me about his work. And he said, well, I'm going to do a little program. I said, what kind? Oh, just a little. Have you ever heard of Unix? I said, yes. Well, that's enough. No. He wasn't interested ever in telling about himself, but he was interested in what was going on with the people around him. And it didn't take very long until I grew to love the man, love him dearly. And I just want you to know that the passing of him has taken something from my heart. It truly has. Because one of the better ones in the world is gone. Thank you.
Hello, I don't know if the microphone is relatively short. Okay. I have a lot of fond memories with my grandpa, by the way, hi. And there were a bunch of times when I lived with him that I remember just walking on him, and he seemed really happy, and I would be having a bad day. And that would just cheer me up because he had such amazing presence, and he was always so happy. Even when he was a little bit upset, he would always find ways to make others happy. And I remember when he was there, me and my brother would always give him a hard time for the cereal thing, like he said. We would always, when he wasn't looking, going to get his milk, steal some bananas out of his bowl. And then we would get so upset when it didn't work out and it made it just right. Sometimes when it didn't work, when we were happy because we were just like, yeah, we did that. And I also remember my brother, the first time he saw my grandpa with his hair down, he was just like, oh my God, it's a pirate. And from that day on, he always told my grandpa that he was a pirate. And my grandpa went along with it, and he even went so along with it to when he had his eye surgery, the stuff that happened with his eye when he got it fixed. He had an eye patch on. And so he took my brother's pirate hat and his little claw thing and had us take pictures of him as a pirate. And that was very fun. And I remember one time, which was really awesome, I was having a really bad day, and him and my grandma took me and my brother out to the clearing, and we played football. And that was really weird because I never thought of him as a really sporty type of person, so him doing anything athletic was kind of surprising. And there were also other times my grandma ended up doing green machine rides with us, which again was the John Deere. And he first started taking us out, and he even went so far to have a little carpet put in the back of the green machine so we could sit down and go on rides. And those rides sometimes lasted for hours because it was so fun going out and doing stuff. And I remember last year I was having a really hard time, and he visited me and just talked to me, and that was really cool. And I remember earlier this year when he had a heart attack that we went to go visit him, and the first thing he was so happy about was that he got Diet Coke. And he so ecstatic that he got Diet Coke, and he was really happy about that. And we visited him one more time when he was at a place that was taking care of him, and I found it really funny because his bed elevated very, very high up in the air, and my brother kept playing with it, and he got really mad because it kept going up and down, and I don't know, just these types of memories are, I guess, what everyone will remember about a person once they pass, and the good times that they had. And recently I found pictures in my basement because I was going through it of me and him and my dog. And I don't think anyone's going to tell the story, so I might as well. I don't think most people know Bethany, and my grandma definitely know it, but he didn't hate Abby, but he always said that she was like a rat and that she was useless, and he always joked about that. But one night he had a dream about roasting her, and ever since then, he always complained about wanting to roast her when she would do something that annoyed him. And the past few months, he had gotten really close to Abby before she died, and she would not leave him alone, and she would cry for hours if he wasn't home. And so he took her to my house to pick us up because she was crying when he left, and he couldn't handle her crying. And he just like, didn't want anyone to feel left out or like sad. And there were also like other times that I know me and my friends will remember like him making pancakes because he was like the best pancake maker, and him making popcorn and just telling his jokes that I thought were really dumb as a child because I didn't really understand any of them. He would tell one about a well, and I asked my mom about it, and it was basic. I don't remember the joke exactly, but it was basically like, well, 3 holes in the ground, and it was. I just didn't get why that was funny. Like, yeah, they're wells. And just his jokes I really miss because even though they were stupid, like they were funny because they were stupid. And I remember how satisfied he would be after he came home outside and cutting down trees, and he was always so excited in the summer to have bonfires, and we didn't get to have one in the summer, but they were always like so much fun. And I remember he would always be out there for hours trying to make perfect fire, and he was a perfectionist when it came to things like the cereal thing. He needed that to be perfect. He needed every last bite to be perfect, and he also with his favorite airplanes. He practiced for like, I don't know how long, but a long time trying to find the perfect airplanes. And I would always stick stickers on them, and I'd get upset that they wouldn't fly because I would literally cover the whole thing in stickers. And of course, it's not going to fly if there's stickers covering it. But I don't know. He was a really nice man, and all the memories that everyone shares with him will definitely live on. And I hope that maybe Theo, I'm going to call it out here, will remember how to make his pancakes and perfect them so we can have his pancakes still. Because he's been working on that, and I applaud him for that because it's very hard. Very, very hard. But just the little things that make a person who they are and make memories emerge from that. And yeah, he was a great guy, and he will definitely be missed. Yeah.
We always have you have many other children? Any children? No, just anybody else? Okay, we can still think about it, because we have a video that somebody would like to share. And one more person? Can we hold that for just a second? Okay, please.
Hi, I'm George. I was a colleague of Roger's back in the day. And my apologies for being late arriving here, but if you worked with Roger, you understand I learned well from him. You've heard of people that walk with kings. Roger worked with Nobels, Nobel Prize winners. Roger's first boss at Bell Laboratories was Arnold Penzias, the Nobel Prize winner for the Big Bang. I first met Roger in about mid-74, and I was given the task of modifying a program for which there was no source code. And I was told to seek out Roger Falkner for advice. And when I found Roger and explained the problem to him, he said, well, right, so you run it on Unix. And I said, that's not an option. Roger runs on IBM mainframe. That's the only thing that it's going to run on. It was special tape. And he pointed me to some tools, and I accomplished the task, and I thanked him for that. And as chance would have it, a year later, I had my first real opportunity to work with Rogers. This was around 1975. And on the same day, 3 brand new mini computers arrived at Bell Laboratories. Roger's computer was up and running within 24 hours of passing diagnostics. It became known as IH-UXA. It was a dedicated general purpose machine. My machine was IH-WPA, and with Roger's help, it was up and running about a week later. The next machine was IH-NP4, and the people assigned to that refused to take Roger's guidance and advice. And I think the reason they named it 4 was because it took over 4 years for them to get it off. Shortly after that, I had to get married. I didn't have to get married. And I was told that upon returning from my honeymoon, I had to report to New Jersey. And I told Roger, since we were working together in Illinois at the time, I told him of the dilemma that I was in, that I had to return from my honeymoon, report to New Jersey. And Roger said, there's 3 people in this location that know Unix, and we can't afford for 1/3 of our expertise to go to New Jersey. And I said, I'm not going to New Jersey, I'm leaving the company. That's the option I had. And he said, well, let me see what I can do. And I didn't expect anything to happen. But Roger went to talk to his boss. His boss called me in the next morning, and his boss, I explained what the situation was. And Roger's boss said, when you come back from your honeymoon, you report to the Unix support group, and I'll take care of everything else. And Roger was a caring person who cared about my well-being. And I wouldn't be where I'm at today had it not been for that move to the Unix support group. At that time, there were 5 people in the Unix support group. Roger Falkner was the lead, obviously. John Richardson, Roger Polesley, Fabrizio Maria Giuseppe Giamaresi, and Jeff Tinker. I contacted all of them when I heard of Roger's passing. The first words out of their mouth was the same as what I've heard here today. Roger was my mentor. He mentored everyone. While I was in that Unix group, I had to collect for, pass out the cards to get payroll deductions for the United Way Crusade of Mercy. And Bell Laboratories requested that employees contribute 2.6%
pay for the Crusade of Mercy that managers contribute 4.3%. When I collected Roger's card, I took a look at it and said, Roger, you made a mistake here. You put down 43%. And you left out the decimal point. And he said, I did not. He said, that money is well spent on the handicap, and I make more than I need. Roger was very generous. A story about Roger's leaving Bell Laboratories. One morning I walked into the computer room about 8 o'clock in the morning, as I normally did. Back in that day, I came in early, worked late, Roger came in late and left early in the morning. But to be there at 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, I said, you're here early, what's going on? And he said, oh, I've been here all night. I said, what are you doing? And he said, I strike the discs. And I had never heard of that before. And he explained that the slowest piece of equipment on a computer was the disk drive and the head moving in and out. So now we had all 4 drives reading and writing at the same time. It was 400% increase in the I/O speed. And he was so proud of this. And so I called down the other members of the Unix group, and Roger gave us all a tutorial on what he had done, and we were all applauding him when our boss walked in. And our boss was Tom Fisher, a great man himself. And we told him what we had done, what Roger had done. And he said, Roger, this is no longer your toy. This is no longer your playroom. Get that off of the machines, restore the machines the way they were, the way they should be. Do it at noon. And Tom walked out. I looked at Roger, he was devastated by this news. I told him, you go home and get some sleep, I'll take care of it. And Roger said to me that this is the end of Camelot. He said, you know, this is what eventually happens, and this is the way that work goes. That, you know, you have fun, and I really think this led to Roger leaving Bell Labs. Years later, after I had left Bell Laboratories, I actually hired Roger to do some work for me. And while we were discussing the work, I asked him a question. I said, do you think the Big Bang could have been caused by a collision of 2 black holes? And Roger, you know, was a physicist, and he said, I don't know. And I don't know what it has to do with this conversation. But we're going to be in New York together next week, and at a dinner with Arnold Penzias, and I'll introduce you, and ask Arnold Penzias yourself. So that'd be great. So after the dinner the next week with Arnold, Roger introduced me, and I asked the question, and Arnold's response was, well, obviously you don't understand my theory, or you never would have asked such a question. And I said, well, maybe you could enlighten me. He goes, well, first of all, the collision of 2 black holes would simply make a larger black hole. That should have been intuitively obvious, and it wasn't. And he said, but you think like 99.99% of the rest of humanity. And he said, you can't comprehend nothing. There was no time, there was no space, there was no matter, there was nothing. When you can comprehend nothing, you'll understand my theory. And he walked away, and I looked at Roger. Roger said, so what do you think? And I said, well, I think he was a pompous, arrogant expletive. And I said, and you worked for this man? And he said, yes. And I said, and what did you think of him? He said, well, I thought he was a pompous, arrogant expletive. He said, but when you win the Nobel Prize, you can act like a pompous, arrogant. So, when last we spoke, we talked about getting together for a cup of coffee. I apologize. apologize that we never did. But I will always miss you, old friend. Thank you for everything.
One more, one more. Okay, I said I wasn't gonna do this because I'm gonna cry, so I'm gonna cry. But I was 7 or 8 when I met Roger. I was really little. Well, yeah, I don't remember that though. And he came, and it was around all the time that stuff was happening with Mike. But I was an only child, surrounded by adults, so I wanted to play. And Roger played with me. And he would follow me around the yard, along with Sandy's dog, who was always good to me. But now I had 2 buddies to follow me around the yard, and that was great. But beyond that, in high school and middle school, if there's ever anything I needed, Roger was my knight in shining armor. If my car broke down 2 miles away from the house or 30 miles away from the house, he would come and save me. He would pick me up from school and we'd go and get Wendy's because that was fun for us, I guess, and that's what we did. But he would always ask me important questions like, "Do you have a boyfriend yet?" And I'd be like, "Yes," or "No." Why? And he just wanted to make sure that they were treating me well for the 14-year-old self that I was. Instilled value in me that I didn't have. He was not blood related to me, but he was more of a grandfather than any of my grandparents had ever been. I spent more time with him than any of my grandparents. And he was at every important event that happened, and I'm so thankful he was at my wedding. He will be truly missed. I will miss laying on the bed with him watching the History Channel and just nothing's going in, but he's fully absorbed or asleep. Or eating meat all the time, or just hanging out, or coming in and giving him a hug and realize that he's dripping with sweat because he was just outside doing yard work. And he's happy, and as happy as a man can be, and not really even understanding what was happening in the office upstairs, but knew that it was kind of important, and that he would get really mad sometimes, and get really happy sometimes, and just that it was code. Or even talking like, he would tell me like he dreamt in code, and I was like, I don't even know what that means. Or he would get in his fits in his own head where he would be trying to sift through something, and physics would just come out, and I'm like 10, and he's just talking to himself, but it's very intelligent blabber, and I don't know, I remember finding out later that he had a doctorate when I was around 10 or 11, and just being like really amazed because he works in the room upstairs. It's not usually what people with doctorates do as far as my knowledge goes. He was very important to me and my growing up, and to who I am today and how I treat other people. And I will dearly miss him.
Anna, intending here from the people in the UK. Just wanted to share one little thing that Roger sent in to me a little while ago. Roger was never particularly tolerant of fools, and occasionally I can be a very specific sort of fool. And after the third time of iterating with a web version with him, where I had consistently misspelt one of the fields in the structure, and one after the other, I looked at one thing and looked at another, and I just screwed it up 2-3 times, which is a no-no in Roger's book. Roger wrote me a poem, and he sent it to me. Edwin is an oddity, his brain is paradoxical, gets the hard things right, but messes up the trivial. Pretty much gets me out exactly bang on. Roger told me to look an awful lot at the bigger picture. But just sometimes I keep missing the small bits that are rather essential. So, thanks, Roger.
As we close, as Roger was not a religious person, we can clearly see, though, that he was a very spiritual person. His soul was deep and caring and sharing, and really, what more can we ever ask of a human being than to share who they are? That's what he did. So we are going to just take, before we close today, a few minutes of quiet time. And this is the time that you have for yourself, for however you think and believe about life. We all know that however we are incarnated in this world, it's a rough ride here. And it's a rough ride for Roger on a lot of levels. And yet, the love he shared is a love that will continue in this place. And so we are going to take time to remember how Roger affected us in one important way today, just for us and for our own edification and self-reflection. So, if you will, share with me just a couple minutes of silent time. We will do that right now. Thanks. Thank you. Sandy and family would be very honored if you would join them at the home of Richard Tacoma and Ann Armstrong for a brief time together to share time, memories, laughter, and tears. The address is on your program at the very bottom here. Love to have you join them there right after this time. And it will be a good place to greet family. Sandy will be here for a few minutes, but then heading off shortly thereafter. So if you don't have an opportunity to speak with her and the rest of the family, then that would be a great place to meet with them. Again, thank you for sharing this time. And I know Sandy and family are honored that you did share your memories and cherish them and welcome them. And don't forget about the family in the next few weeks and months, where they will need your support, your kind words, and your care. Good afternoon.
Yes.
Pastor Mark. Do you remember Shannon and all? He hasn't changed so much. No, quite a bit. She got lost.
No, I actually haven't lost it.